when you are working with your spouse, it's very easy to take things personally. And I took it personally and I was like, fine, then it's your company, you do it.
I love bookkeeping.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for listening to the I Love Bookkeeping podcast. My name is Hannah Robinson.
And I'm Melissa Honan.
And thank you for listening. Today, we're going to be talking about something that we have heard from quite a few listeners, and that is being married and working with your spouse or partner. Now, Melissa, I'm going to be asking you 1,000 questions about this because I am not married, nor do I work with my boyfriend. Actually, I take that back. I do a little bit of work with him, mainly just helping him. So I might be able to chime in a tiny bit. But Melissa, you do work with your husband. So at what point in your marriage did you guys start working together?
Ooh, that's a great question. So my husband decided to start bookkeeping for painters back in 2016, right after he had gotten back from his first deployment. He was deployed for, I think, about a year. And that was actually the first year of our marriage. So for those of you that don't know, I did what I literally would never recommend to anyone, which is, started dating this guy I met on eHarmony. Everything seemed great. All of a sudden he's talking about I'm going to be, deploying for a year, whatever, And then 4 months into dating, we got married and then he deployed for a year. He did that typical military thing. Again, highly don't recommend to most people. So it was right after he got back from that, first year of our marriage, deployment, started the business. And he started it in July of 2016. And in October of 2016, so just a few months later, is when I left my job. And so I had a job in retail management, very sales heavy management, 6 figures, definitely on the track to be upper management really quickly. And it was awful. It was awful. I don't know how I did it for so long. Everyone I know that I worked with at the time has left since then too. It was just the terrible 80-hour-a-week job, 6 figures for what, right? And so I had come home crying for the 8th time that week or something like that. Every time I tell this story, the number of times I cry goes up and becomes more accurate. And he was like, well, why don't you just quit your job and come work with me? Because he was getting busier and he's like, you can do the sales, I can do the operations. And so I did it. So I quit my job without anything lined up necessarily, because having your own business is scary. And that's when we started. So we worked together there for about a year because, shortly after I became pregnant. And when I had my son, I had him early at 36 weeks. I had some complications and so did he. Is when so about a year later, I worked myself out of the business. And then 2 years later, at the end of 2018, going into 2019, we were gearing up for my husband to go on another deployment. This time it was going to be longer. I had a 2-year-old. And so we decided I would come back into the business just in an administrative role, help with billing, help answer questions because he was going to be gone. We had a CEO in place that was going to take care of everything. I just had to do the typical wife doing the back office, right?
Yeah.
I'm the bookkeeper. Which is funny. And right as that happened, the CEO quit on a Friday night via text message with no notice, while my husband was in the field. And for those of you that are military wives, was in the field where, they don't have any contact, no phones, only in case of emergency, right? You were given a phone number where it's if someone dies, let the chain of command know and they'll go find your husband. So this was not, an emergency. So, over the next couple of weeks, as I was working through this just momentous occasion, I guess, on my own without my husband, I decided that I would step in as CEO and that I would work full time.
Wow.
I was 5 months pregnant at the time. And my husband was about to deploy for a year, and I had a 2-year-old. And so over the next almost 2 years, because he was deployed for about 19 months when, the deployment was already supposed to be long, and then COVID extended it, and then there was training on both ends, and it was just a long time. I worked in the company without him. When he came home, I basically was like, you can't come back because I'm used to working without you now. And then he ended up coming back. So about 4 or 5 months ago, maybe even 6 now. So 4 to 6 months ago, he came back working in the company. I asked him to come back and help me with some operational items, very similar to how it was in the beginning. I was like, I can't do all of the things. There's too many hats on my head. I need help. Can you come back? And so I'm really like sales focused. He's more operations focused. And then he officially came back more in a full-time capacity 2 months ago as our chief of operations. So at this point, it has been his company with me helping him. It has been his company without me. It's been my company without him. And then now it's my company with him helping me. And now I guess it's really our company together. So I feel like I have had every experience in working with my spouse over the last 6 years.
Wow. So let me ask you this. Do you guys work physically in the same office together?
So no, I am a loud talker, and it's so funny because a couple weeks ago, we had been trying to work in the same office together in one of the houses that we were living in. And every time I would come to record this podcast with Hannah, I just get so excited. We always joke that we're always going into the red, and the editors are like, can you guys talk quieter? No, I really can't, guys. I'm trying really hard.
I'm incapable. I'm so sorry.
It's not possible. So if he could, he'd just leave the room, right? But then there was a lot, both of our businesses have been getting really busy. So he would need to be in meetings. And so I have gotten kicked out of the office many times. So now in the house that we're living in now, we are working separately just because I'm so loud.
So would you say you guys have ever been in the dynamic of boss and employee? And it sounds like because you've switched up so much, if you have, how do you kind of balance out being a boss and employee relationship and also being in a personal relationship?
That's a great question. When we first started, I had left a management role, and it was really hard for me because I felt like my entire identity was my work life, right? Just like we're talking about work-life balance, I was living to work, everything. It was just from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, 7 days a week. Just my whole life was that job. And so leaving it was really hard for me. And it felt like a breakup. And I told my husband when I came on board, I was like, I don't want to manage. I don't want to be the boss. I don't want to be in charge. I've been in charge. It's so stressful. I just want to work for you. And so, the first year, I worked for him. And it's probably why I quit and left the company for a while. I'm not going to mince words with you guys. It did not work. It worked really well at the beginning, and then it didn't, because I really am I'm a Leo, and I don't, if you know what that means, you do. If you don't, I'm not huge into astrology, but I'm a pain in the ass. I am the boss. That is I have been told since I was 2 years old that I am just I am a bossy person. I am assertive. I am, I'm that person to volunteer to be in charge. If I go to an event, people are like, oh yeah, she'll lead the team. It's just, I am a leader. I have been born a leader, and so has my husband. And so that dynamic worked very well for a little bit, and then it didn't, because then I'm supposed to be his employee, but then I have all of these ideas and things that I want to do at the company. And I had gotten out of the burnout zone from leaving the other job, and I was ready to go full charge. And there was enough times where he was like, no, we're not going to do that. Where I was like, then you can do it by yourself. And then I just left. Not again, if this was something not working with my husband, I wouldn't be that unprofessional, right? But that's the thing, right? It's when you are working with your spouse, it's very easy to take things personally. And I took it personally, and I was like, fine, then it's your company, you do it.
Today's show is brought to you by Keeper, the one app to run your bookkeeping business. Keeper helps you get faster client responses with your own custom branded QuickBooks integrated client portal. Finally, you can say goodbye to those pesky spreadsheets full of uncategorized transactions. Keeper also helps you catch those embarrassing coding errors before your clients do. And with Keeper, you can generate beautiful custom reports that your clients will absolutely love to read. To find out more, go to keeper.app. That's keeper.app. Mention I Love Bookkeeping to get 20% off your first 3 months. Again, go to keeper.app to find out more. Thank you for listening. Well, and I think maintaining like a level of professionalism is really tough to do. But and again, I don't work with my partner or spouse, but it sounds like it's something that could be really, really important so that not only are you not fighting at work, but you're not carrying over that feeling of taking it personally into your home as well. Because I know that I tend to do the same thing. I could take it personally sometimes, and it can carry over to like a conflict at home. And ultimately, that's not what you want. You don't want to, nobody likes conflict. Nobody, that doesn't create a great work-life balance. Doesn't have a lot of harmony. But I think that can be a giant pain point for those who are listening and working with their spouse. I think to me, that sounds like that could be something that everyone struggles with, is not taking things personally and maintaining professionalism when you're with your spouse and fighting or arguing like you would with an employee or a boss, instead of looking at it as your husband or your wife or your spouse or partner, whatever you want to say. But
that is something I have to work on that every day. And so what I've been doing, and this is something that I worked on even with my communication consultant up until I was like, okay, Jen, you are so kind. She's helped guiding me on how to work with my husband because he also works in the same company as me. So he is the founder of the company and also the chief of operations. And so technically he is my boss and also my subordinate. And so she was really helping me work through some of my personal issues with it, up until the point where I told her, I was like, look, I think this is like going into therapist zone. I will go and find a therapist for some of this because you're not my marriage counselor, right? And so, but what she was helping me do is compartmentalize it, is what are all of the roles that he is in my life? And so he is the founder of the company, which is my boss. He is chief of operations, which is my subordinate, but a member of my management team. He is my husband, and he is the father of my children. And in those 4 different roles, I have to separate how I respond to things based on which role he's filling in that time. And that has really helped me. But it's also helped me be petty AF, because when he says something to me, I will flat out look him in the face and say, which role are you right now? Because that's going to be how I respond. And so I highly recommend you take Hannah's advice of professionalism, which is something that I struggle with.
I'm the queen of the phrase, what was that? Like, if you ever hear me say like, huh, what was that? That's like me saying, how about you rephrase?
As the CEO of this company, I feel like I would like to respond to this in a calm manner, and I can't do that at 7:00 at night. So if you could send me an email about it, that would be great.
Yeah. We can table this for later. Okay. So quick question. What's Daniel's sign? I have to know.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. He was born on March 6th. What does that make him?
He's a Pisces.
Is that a good thing?
That's like a water sign. I am into astrology, so we can have a whole other. But I was curious because you were telling me that he's a leader, you're a leader, but you're a fire sign. So I was like wondering if he was also a fire sign, because that's always like a cool combination. But whole other episode for another time, because I'm super into astrology.
We'll have to dig deep into that, but this could be like a marriage meets business series. Marriage
meets business meets astrology. We'll have a whole astrology series. So how long it started in 2016. So what's probably the biggest takeaway or like the biggest piece of advice that you could give to people who are starting off working with their spouse? Like, what are some things that they can implement in their business so that they have peace in their business, but also peace at home within their relationship?
And I think that circles back to really what we've been talking about the last couple of episodes, which is creating boundaries and then essentially having a process in place to make sure that those boundaries stay in place and that everyone's respecting them. And so there's a lot of tough conversations that need to happen. And you need to have those before you go into it rather than after. And if you don't know that you can do that on your own, that's okay. I'm not saying that this isn't going to work for you, but then you do need to find somebody to help you facilitate that conversation. Like, for instance, my business coach is a communication consultant. She really helps me have hard conversations because it doesn't come easily to me. I really shut down, especially if I'm having a face-to-face conversation, if I feel overwhelmed because I can't process my emotions very quickly. And so in that light, she's essentially given me permission, which is what I needed from somebody to, have those hard conversations in writing rather than, face-to-face. And so I think a big thing is determining how you guys best communicate and then using that as a base for creating the rest of your boundaries and being very firm in those. So do you work well together in the same room? Yes. Okay. How does your desk need to be set up for, so that it's a good, work vibe for both of you? If no, okay, where are you both going to work separately? Do you need to have like a do not disturb mode where they don't enter your office or they don't, bother you in the middle of the workday? Like, do you guys want to Slack message like you would if you were any other remote working employee that's not actually in the same office? So there's a lot of those like details that should be worked out ahead of time. From a relationship standpoint, I think it's really hard. And I would like to say, like, I advocate for marriage counseling. We have not done it. We probably should. But I think that there's a lot of things where you're probably going to end up taking it personally, no matter what you do right. And it could be really hard to work that out on your own. So again, I think if you know how to do it on your own and you guys already communicate really well, and that's fine, great. But if you don't communicate in the best way right now, when you're just married, adding work is not going to make that better. So definitely going into it, being proactive on how you guys are going to communicate, drawing those boundaries and how you're going to respect those boundaries.
Well, and I think if I've learned anything about relationships, whether it's a personal relationship or a working relationship, hard conversations are just going to get harder the longer you sit on it. So I think it's better to be a little more proactive with, and just like you said, establishing the boundaries in the beginning versus, and I mean, there's things that you're going to have to learn as you go, that you don't know what you don't know. But I do think what you said is so important to figure out in the beginning. Okay, do we work in the same room together? What kind of dynamic do we work best with? Should we talk to a therapist about our communication, which is no shame in that, because I think therapy is absolutely amazing. We could have a whole episode on therapy if we wanted to. But I think establishing boundaries early on, I think that's probably something so important. I mean, even, this episode's obviously about being married or, being together with your partner in business. But I think that kind of goes for anything, like any relationship, is just establishing from the get-go, if you're spending a lot of time with somebody, your expectations and what you want. And kind of circling back to our last episode, and we talked about different ways to implement boundaries. I think when you're establishing what you need, it can be done kindly. It can be done in a nice tone of voice. And it doesn't have to be World War III. It doesn't have to be a big blow up. And if that's something that you're struggling with as a couple, then maybe working on your communication styles is something that could be a good goal to work towards together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I have so much like practical advice on specific phrases and specific processes that you could use to make that easier, as well as a lot of advice that I have for anyone that is currently a stay-at-home mom that is moving into working from home and then also potentially moving into working with their spouse or partner. That will be like 3 hours of content. So Hannah, this is going to have to be a series. So maybe we should have an episode on whatever series we're doing with your spouse and partner.
Yeah. Well, that's something that we can definitely do. All right. Well, we have talked about some great ideas and tips today for if you are working with your spouse or your partner in your business, or if you are thinking about going into business with your spouse or partner. As always, if you want to write into the show, if you have questions, concerns, comments, you just want to tell us how awesome we are, we always appreciate that. Please shoot us an email at success@ilovebookkeeping.com. Again, that is success@ilovebookkeeping.com. My name is Hannah Robinson.
And I'm Melissa Honan.
And thank you for listening to the I Love Bookkeeping podcast.
I love bookkeeping. Here's a little shout to all my friends working hard at keeping the books. You want to change your life, you want to grow that biz, it's not as hard as it looks. Be a money guide, a profit coach, step up your game and see. You'll be working less and making more.